Alright, well my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be... Did I put my volume? Okay, that's good. Can the same thing be said about Assassin's Creed? Stick around and find out. Santa Claus knows we're all God's children, that makes everything right. So let's give thanks to the Lord above, cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Those are some of the most nonsensical, self-defeating song lyrics I've ever heard. Speaking of which, let's talk about Assassin's Creed, the movie. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Here's my uncut review of Assassin's Creed. The synopsis from 20th Century Fox reads, through a revolutionary technology that unlocks his genetic memories, Callum, they call him Cal for short, Calum, I'm going to say, Lynch, played by Michael Fassbender, or is it Fassbender? I'm going to say Fassbender, because I heard someone say it that way the other day. Experiences adventures of his ancestor, Aguilar. I looked up a pronunciation guide for that too. Aguilar. His ancestor Aguilar in 15th century Spain during the Spanish Inquisition. Calum discovers he is descended from a mysterious secret society, the Assassins, and amasses incredible knowledge and skills to take on the oppressive and powerful Templar organization in the present day. Alright, so let's talk about story, script, pacing, that kind of thing. This movie flashes back and forth between modern day and the action-packed memory sequences during the Spanish Inquisition. The flashbacks, I thought, were actually fairly boring for me, even though they were very action-packed, until about the last one, because I couldn't identify with the mission and the values of the Assassins, and I didn't feel like the action sequences were in a directly obvious way leading to the goals that the Assassins had, and I also knew that Aguilar would survive until he got closer to his goals, you know, so oddly enough, they didn't have a whole lot of tension for me. The modern sequences, which actually make up, I think, probably more than half of the movie in the total running time, were much more interesting and involving as Cal deals with side effects of the tech that's used to induce these flashbacks, and that's called the Animus, is the name of that tech. And he sorts through, you know, he's also sorting through his immediate family history and discovering things about his parents that he never knew, and his motives also change, which has a direct effect on the plot. So now that's not to say that those modern sequences don't have any action in them. Actually, a lot of them have action sequences. I won't say more than that. I don't want to spoil anything. But don't think that just because more than half of the movie takes place in modern day, that it doesn't have lots of cool Assassin's Creed-y type of action. There's plenty of cool action going on in the modern day. The story also nearly gets into some nice father-son drama, which I'm always a sucker for, but it doesn't quite get into that territory. It just really kind of teases the edges of it. Still, though, there's some nice character stuff that I wouldn't expect from a video game movie. And let me just go ahead and put this out there. This, I think, might be the most enjoyable quality experience I've had with a video game movie. I don't think that all video game movies suck. I just don't know that any of them have been really great. And I don't know if I'd describe this one as really great either, but I do think it's good. I definitely enjoyed it. Every now and then the script has some dialogue bits that feel unnatural, but most of the time the script I thought was solid enough for me, apart from some logic issues, which we're going to come back to that. The Animus, the flashback-inducing technology, is cool visually, but it doesn't make much sense practically. They got him in this harness, and they put these assassin's blades on him, and they have him spinning and jumping around. I'm like, why do they have to have him do all that? If this thing's plugging into the back of his head and giving him all these, you know, hallucinations of his ancestors' memories, why does he have to also jump around? And why, if he needs this thing to do the jumping around, does he not need poles to grab onto when he's doing things that involve grabbing poles and climbing poles? I mean, yeah, there's some kind of logical disconnect there, but you know, there are several places in this movie that have logical disconnects. But that said, I kind of got over it because visually it was interesting, you know, and I don't know, I got over it. The cast is all solid, but mostly there to do action. Michael Fassbender, we'll say, brings some subtext, I thought, to his character, and Marion Cotillard, is that how you say her name? I don't know. She's the head scientist for the flashback-inducing project, and she's nicely conflicted in this story. So I thought there was just some nice little touches going on with those two central characters. As far as the stunts and visuals go, cool action, cool fight scenes. They're mixing practical and CG effects, but mostly it has a practical, grounded feel in the flashback and modern sequences both. There's nothing groundbreaking going on with the visuals and the stunts, but the action beats and the choreography were mixed up just enough for me now and then to keep things visually interesting. All right, so one thing I always try to ask myself, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance in this that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation after or during, the viewing of it? And I think so in this one. These Templars, in the main story, there's the Templars group versus the Assassins. And the Templars, they want to just kind of eradicate violence in the world, and the thing that they think is going to do that for them is this artifact called the Apple of Eden. Yes, they're talking about the fruit from the Garden of Eden, which they have just decided, definitely was an apple. There is a Hebrew word for apple used in the Old Testament. It's not in Genesis. That's purely tradition. That it's just the word in Hebrew in Genesis is just kind of a broad word that describes fruit or tree. So it felt like, with them doing all these like scientific archaeological research, that like when they got around to doing like their Bible research, they just used like children's Sunday school curriculum or something. Every time they keep using this phrase, the Apple of Eden, the Apple of Eden, the apple. Every time they said the Apple of Eden, I was waiting for them to like pull out a flannel graph to describe, and this is where we think it might be today. So it just kind of felt ridiculous to me. I think a lot of people aren't going to have that problem, because I think probably a lot of people, the average moviegoer, doesn't know that like the Bible actually doesn't say apple. So I think for a lot of people it's not going to be anything. But for me, I was like, oh, that just feels weird and ridiculous. So, biblical history and archaeology, it's a real thing. It's been going on for a long time with real scholars whom I wish had been consulted to give some better language to the script in these parts, to just kind of ground it a little bit more. Of course, the Bible, which the Templars cite as their knowledge source for the apple, never says the fruit of the tree can even potentially, via some kind of manipulation, rob people of their free will, which is totally what they're counting on it to do in this story. If anything, the fruit from that tree broadened mankind's choices. If they keep reading their Bible, the Templars would know that mankind will not actually be rescued from its violent tendencies by some ancient artifact, but by the rescuing forgiveness and transformation that only Jesus makes possible, as well as by the ultimate quarantine of all evil that Jesus, not flawed human judges, will eventually bring about. Now, the Assassins are a mess too, although the movie doesn't showcase, I didn't think, their hypocrisy and dysfunction to the degree that I thought was implied in an interview with Michael Fassbender, in which he described the moral landscape as being very murky, the implication being that there was not a real clear, like, good and bad team to be on. But I felt the movie was painting the Templars and their beliefs in a much more negative and extreme light than they did with the Assassins. Although it's possible that the Assassins' belief will be examined and criticized more in a sequel, which I would really like to see. They certainly, I don't want to say they were like upholding the Assassin's Creed, which we'll get to in a second, as like this is good and reliable and shouldn't be questioned, but at the same time, it wasn't really questioned or examined or shown to have any kind of dark sides or faults in this movie. So it'll just be interesting to kind of see what happens. The Assassin's Creed upholds two primary belief statements, which are nothing is true and everything is permitted. But these both completely undercut the Assassins and their goals in a devastatingly self-defeating way. First off, If nothing is true, that includes the statement that nothing is true, okay? If that's not what you meant, guys, you got to expand on that a little bit. You can't just say nothing is true. In fact, before that, the full statement is something like, while the Templars or other people blindly follow truth, we remember that nothing is true. Like, really? Nothing is true? If that's true, it's a self-defeating statement, and even setting that aside, it also means that, like, any additional statement made by an assassin ever in any other context should be considered untrustworthy. But you can't even really get that far, because the statement itself is undercutting and self-defeating and therefore nonsensical. Second, if everything is permitted, they say that, these guys, they have their moral constraints, but we believe this. Well, okay, if you're saying that everything is permitted, then you're saying that is a moral good to permit everything. So you're not exactly free from having these kinds of like moral absolutes yourself. And also, if everything is permitted, then that would include the attempts of the Templars to remove free will and control our lives. So really, assassins, you should not be fighting their efforts to do what they want to do, because everything is permitted. So anyway, if the tenets of this creed are meant to be extreme, and we're supposed to, as audience members, say, well, they're kind of whacked out too, I don't see these statements being presented as extreme in this story. In fact, these ideas, although self-defeating, are among the most popular values held by many Americans today. We don't want to be confronted with the truth. And even though the Bible would teach against these things, I'm talking about believing Christians too. We fall into, maybe even on a subconscious level, gravitating toward these things. It is just what comes naturally to us. These, let's see, I'm falling off my notes here, and that's where everything gets off the rails. Crap, I'm tired, it's late. I don't usually do this late. Oh yeah, we don't want to be confronted with the truth, but we'd rather just kind of believe what we want to believe and be left alone to believe what we want to believe and not have our beliefs challenged in any way. That's kind of like not cool to challenge someone else's beliefs. And we also want to be left alone to do whatever we want. We just permit me to just have everything be permissible in my life, My hope is that in the sequel that is clearly intended at the end of this movie, they will explore the dark-sided ramifications of these unexamined beliefs that make up the Assassin's Creed. It would help keep Cal's journey interesting and conflicted, and would also be a good thing for the average moviegoer to think about as well. Okay, so I have no idea what your tastes are in movies or anything like that. If I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one for now. You don't need to see it. You've never played any of these Assassin's Creed games, and so you have no particular draw to this. You can skip this for now until at least the box office guarantees a sequel will come, because the ending, no spoilers, the ending, it's one of those kinds of like, well, we've done this little thing right now, but the big battle is to come, and we must begin preparing for it. So it kind of like yanks the rug out of the climax a little bit in this movie, because it's clearly like set up. The climax itself is still just kind of set up for what's coming, which feels kind of presumptuous. I'm like, guys, I wish you would have just made a much more self-contained thing. Sure, leave some unresolved bits, that's fine, but make it a little more self-contained so we can just go away from this movie saying, yeah, or something. I mean, I don't know. And maybe other people will have very different experiences, but Peter, that's not going to be your experience when you watch this movie. You're going to leave feeling more like this is potentially a solid setup to a couple of great movies that are coming, rather than a truly satisfying experience on its own. It's rated PG-13 for intense sequences of violence and action, thematic elements, and brief, strong language. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. I'd love to hear if you're if you're a fan of the games. This movie actually made me, I want to stop recording, get this thing uploaded and done with, because I want to revisit these Assassin's Creed games. I've never given them a try before. I've liked some of the Ubisoft games that have come out, like the Far Cry games, although there's some things about how they structure missions there and how they funnel you in your missions to do them a certain way that have been really, really annoying to me and have kept me away from trying out the Assassin's Assassin's Creed games, but it's such a celebrated series. It's got a movie now. I actually want to stop recording and go watch some reviews of the Assassin's Creed games and see if maybe they'll be worth giving a try, because this movie kind of made me jazzed for the whole concept. Anyway, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments below. And then, boom, join us at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to look for the button and seek the truth.